This small Latvian town sets an example of building beautifully. The houses you're seeing now are brand new, and these ones were built in the 1980s. This is how most architecture looked in the 80s, and this is what it looks like today. While many architects worldwide favor minimalism and reject ornamentation, the town of Kuldīga stands out for its commitment to preserving its architectural traditions. Kuldīga, formerly known as Kuldīga, is a small town in western Latvia, known for having Europe's widest waterfall, which sounds more exciting than it looks. But it's not the waterfall that makes this town special. It is the embrace of local architectural traditions. So, why does Kuldīga continue to build houses with an old-fashioned appearance rather than building modernist architecture? And how do they manage to achieve this? Unlike most urban areas in the Baltics, Kuldīga managed to survive both world wars with its historic center largely intact. Places like Liepāja, Jelgava, and Valmiera saw most of their beautiful centers turn into rubble. Kuldīga, however, largely remained an exception, and thus it was seen as important to preserve it in its authentic form. Through careful renovation and construction, Kuldīga has developed into an exceptionally well-preserved urban area, showcasing traditional Baltic architecture and urbanism. All of this hard work, largely by this group of people right here, has resulted in a charming town that was recently added to the UNESCO World Heritage list, an enormous success for the municipality and its residents. Being recognized worldwide has attracted visitors from all over the globe, stimulating local businesses and boosting the town's economy. However, reaching this point wasn't easy and certainly wasn't a quick process. Kuldīga's preservation story goes back to the Soviet occupation, during which historical heritage wasn't really seen as a value, with several beautiful places around the country getting destroyed. However, it was surprisingly recognized by Soviet authorities that Kuldīga is of significant importance and should be preserved. In 1969, the historic center of Kuldīga was designated as a state-protected area, subject to very strict rules aimed at conserving its traditional urban fabric. Significant efforts were made to restore existing buildings, however, several buildings were beyond repair due to neglect and had to be demolished. But if architects could build modernist buildings in their place, it would ruin the distinct character of the town. This is why Kuldīga's building regulations mandated that new buildings must adhere to historical proportions and replicate historical facades. This even meant preserving authentic load-bearing structures and components such as windows, doors, and decorations, unless technically unfeasible. Although some reconstructed buildings deviated from the historical building line, or the facade design wasn't the same, adherence to traditional design principles was foremost. This house on Kaltu Street 7 had to be demolished and was rebuilt in the 1970s with a few changes in the facade design. If it hadn't been for the strict building regulations, an architect could design a boring modern building like this instead. Now, just imagine, if modernism hadn't had such a profound effect on architecture, we would see beautiful new buildings that embrace local architectural traditions. Instead, we get boring modern developments around the world that lack character. Towns and cities each have their unique architectural identities, and the best way to preserve this is by designing buildings that honor those local traditions rather than constructing modern buildings that don't have detail and thus identity. New traditional buildings like these are only a tiny proportion of new architecture worldwide. There are several reasons for this, but perhaps the biggest is that architects simply aren't taught to design buildings in this way. The Aesthetic City has made an excellent video on this topic, and I strongly recommend checking out the channel if you're new to this subject. Now, you might think that building traditional buildings is significantly more expensive than modern ones, but that's not always the case, especially with relatively simple detailed buildings like this. But for modern developers, quick profit is often the sole goal, who tend to overlook important aspects like beauty and sustainability. Beautiful places encourage preservation, unlike boring places that are more likely to get demolished and replaced with something new. We can witness this today with modernist developments from the 1980s getting demolished and replaced with more soulless developments. However, a place like Kuldīga, with its beautiful traditional architecture, will be something future generations will want to preserve. Kuldīga's building regulations were established during the Soviet Union, when there was no private property, yet they still function today. Since the 90s, the municipality has remained dedicated to a single goal: preserving the town's authentic appearance. However, expecting each homeowner to voluntarily commit to such an important task isn't realistic. To address this, the municipality offers residents clear instructions on renovating historic buildings and provides window restoration consultations. Additionally, they can provide financial support to homeowners for property restoration. But traditional building design isn't the only way the town maintains its charm. Careful street design is just as important as the buildings. The municipality had designers create new versions of old lampposts which were installed in the 2000s, opting against modern alternatives. This lamppost has character, but this modern one is just a lamppost. Similarly, vintage-looking benches were also installed. However, perhaps the most significant change was the reintroduction of cobblestone roads. During the Soviet occupation, asphalt replaced cobblestones, but a few years ago, the municipality had the money to put them back in. This not only keeps vehicle speeds low, but also looks better. To complete the streetscape, the municipality opted for smaller traffic signs to reduce visual pollution. By comparing the traffic signs in Riga to those in Kuldīga, you can see just how big of a difference they make. And of course, not everything was done perfectly over the years. For instance, some houses aren't that good looking. And while several properties still await restoration, the progress made so far is truly remarkable. Having said all of this, Kuldīga did see some modernist developments during and after the Soviet era, but these were mainly placed outside the town center to maintain the traditional urban fabric. In contrast, the capital city of Riga, like most of the world, allows architects to develop freely among the traditional urban fabric. As a result, several boring buildings ruin the distinct character of the city. However, new traditional buildings have also appeared in Riga, facing strong criticism from modern architects. Yet, the truth is that people walking around enjoy the architecture just as they do in Kuldīga and do not think about whether the buildings are new or old. They simply appreciate the beauty of the environment. Had Kuldīga embraced the ideology of modernist architects who often oppose traditional design principles, it would have lost its unique charm and most likely would not have become a World Heritage Site. Kuldīga stands as an outstanding example of a town that has preserved its beauty by largely avoiding modernist design principles and embracing local architectural traditions. To maintain the charm of our towns and continue creating beautiful new places, we should take inspiration from traditional design principles. These principles are what people have come to enjoy and will create beautiful places like Kuldīga.